Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and we have a very special guest with us today, Don Golden. Don is the founder of Just Capital Quotient, which is a consulting business he's going to tell us all about. And so we'll get into that in a minute. But Don, thanks for being on the program.
So glad to be with you, Jeff.
Well, this is a lot of fun. We were just having a conversation before we hit record, and we could go for hours with Don, but we'll try to keep it concise. Don, as you know, we always try to start out with just some context. Where did you grow up? What was your family like? Was there any faith involved or not? Was there any entrepreneurial stuff happening? What was happening to Don as a kid growing up?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I grew up in the countryside of Southern Ohio. And there was a lot of faith everywhere. I had uncles who were preachers, but my parents were kind of backslidden. So I had just enough religion to kind of make me miserable. I knew what was wrong, but I didn't know how to do really the right. But I had a deep spirituality that kind of came to fruition around college, and with a good mentor. Really learned a lot about having the right mentor, and I'm just so grateful for that person that led me to a vital faith in Christ.
Well, and where did you go to school?
Yeah, I attended what used to be called North Central Bible College. The interesting thing is that person who discipled me went on to become a missionary in Europe while the refugees were coming out of Eastern Europe in 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Wow.
And he invited me to join him. And so I dropped out of Bible college and bought a one-way ticket with my money that I had saved up for that semester, bought a one-way ticket to Vienna, Austria, which I thought Vienna was in Italy. That's how much I knew about the world.
Right.
I got on a plane, went, and my life was changed. I was just thrust into this world of human suffering, highly educated people fleeing Eastern Europe, coming into Vienna. Every night I would be with one of 35 different language groups. I had to really ask myself deep questions about faith. Why is it that I think I'm going to heaven and all these people are going to hell because they were born in the wrong country? And what's that all about? And why are they more educated and yet poorer than I am? So I had to ask the deep, fundamental questions that really changed my life and set a new trajectory for me.
Well, it sounds like that was a pivotal, because that sent you into this sort of career. Just out of curiosity, did you come back, or did you?
In some ways, I never came back. Although I did finish my studies. And actually did move to England and finish my studies in Britain. Did a dissertation on the role of the local church in mission, because what I was concerned about is why am I in a mission agency and we're at the front line of all these human problems, and our churches are kind of worried about paving parking lots, and they're not dealing with the big issues. And so I came to really believe that the church, God's people, have to have mission at their beating heart to really be God's people. And that was another key pivot point for me in my development.
Well, we have some things in common. My dad was a business guy turned pastor, and one of his first churches was in rural Ohio, close to the West Virginia border. So I spent some time in that world. And then I was actually studying abroad in Germany in 1989, and was in Berlin. It's Christmas of I guess
exactly.
it was 88. I think it was.
No, 89. It was Christmas 89.
89 is when it fell. So it was the year before.
The Romanian Revolution, and then
Checkpoint Charlie in December of 88.
Wow.
So I saw that whole situation, but I was more career focused. You were more mission focused. I'll give the nod to your intent
Well,
for
we're going to
being
come
over
around. We're
there.
going to come back around to business and mission here in a
Yeah.
minute.
Well. So okay. So now this. So I'm just picturing this. So I kind of know that region of the country where you
Mhm.
grew up, and so not everybody, not to be too stereotypical, but Americans in general don't often have this big global view so early. Perhaps maybe business takes them there. I think that's really interesting that for a lot of people, college is a place where maybe you move away from your faith and they maybe come back later. It sounds like it was an accelerant for you. And I mean,
Mhm.
so we kind of moved through that quickly, but maybe unpack that a little bit. Like,
Mhm.
what happened in college? Tell us a little more about that mentor and like that decision making. That's a big deal to leave college and
Yeah,
move
yeah,
to
yeah.
Europe.
Yeah, well, I've had a sense of calling,
You did.
that I wanted to go into ministry,
Oh,
and
you
so I
did.
went off to Bible college, but I think it was really immaturity, but I could not put two and two together. I couldn't see how what I was studying at that time
Yeah.
was particularly related to ministry. Now, again, I think I was immature and
Sure.
impetuous, but I was struggling with that. And so when my friend reached out and said, "Hey, we're up to our eyeballs in ministry challenges. Would you come and help us?" I just took it as a Macedonian call. And, growing up in Southern Ohio, parents, I didn't know anyone with a college education, literally didn't know
Okay. Yeah.
anyone with a college education. So when I seriously mean that when I bought my ticket to Vienna, I didn't even know what country I was going to. And
Right.
so it just, but then when I got there, I studied German at the University of Vienna. Every day I would walk through Sigmund Freud Park and I would walk past his apartment. I could go to the opera for $2. And so I
Right.
went from Southern Ohio where I mean, I don't know, hadn't read too many books to super highbrow culture
Exactly. I mean,
and
you can't pick probably can't pick I mean, you got London. I mean, it's in the short conversation of places on the globe that are highbrow, shall
yeah,
we say, in Vienna.
absolutely. And what I found was a deep curiosity about life, about the world,
Yeah.
about what was happening in the world, and then the
Yeah.
stories of all these refugees coming
Yeah.
across, swimming the Danube, and telling me their story. And I would take time to kind of research every people group that came into our ministry, and it just lit a fire in my heart to understand how big the gospel is and what God's intent is to heal the world and how much work there was to do.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was expanding. I mean, you're young at this point, but it's also expanding your worldview, what's
Absolutely.
happening on the
Yeah.
planet. How does God's word fit into that? All of these things swirling around. So, just to get kind of tangible, what was that mission organization
Yeah,
doing?
that
Were they
was
just
it
providing
used to be
physical
called
relief or?
yeah, no, it used to be called International Teams. It's now called the One Collective based in outside of Chicago. And it is a mission sending agency, but over the years they have begun to recognize that, as they used to say, hungry bellies have no ears, that
Right.
the whole gospel to the whole person for the whole world. And so we were running a refugee center. It was like a coffee bar, but we would house refugees when they needed it. We would we would help them find immigrant legal services. And we really that's actually where I learned that to preach the gospel is to marry the fundamental challenges of the people that you're preaching to. That they have, and it isn't just to go to heaven someday. In fact, in my theological studies, I learned, wait a minute, Jesus said, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And John
Mm,
saw the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God. This is about this place, this time, and the kingdom. Jesus went around preaching the kingdom and working for its arrival. So it was like, how do you tell people about Jesus if you're not helping them navigate the immigration legal services or refugee services to get to a country where they can call home? So I really began to see a whole gospel, which I used to back then think that was liberals. When anybody would say that, it was, oh, that's the liberal, that's the social gospel. And then I kind of read sort of what Jesus was up to and realized that that's not a fair division.
wow. I mean, sometimes when we hear these stories, kind of the growing up piece, sometimes that kind of gets waylaid until maybe later in life when people sort of connect the dots. But it seems to me that your dots have been connected kind of all the way. And I know there's you kind of went from the ministry thing kind of backdoored into business, whereas I think a lot of our people kind of go business and then they kind of become more ministry focused as they do that. But you sort of converged on this. So maybe just keep what's the next thing you have? I know this sort of international relief thing has been a theme for
well,
you.
so that, if the first stage was mission agencies,
Yeah.
and then through that, learning that there was some false dichotomy between church and mission, that anywhere where there's a church, there should be a mission. So you shouldn't,
Right.
what's this up? So that was my first learning, that you can't have mission without church, because
Right.
it's like the PowerPoint that illustrates the gospel. Hey, look at these people, look at us
Right.
and how we live. This is the message that I'm telling you. You can't tell people a message until you can put your arms around them and help care for them. So that was my kind of an ecclesiology. And then when I came back to work at the home office in Chicago, I joined a church, and on the first day of that church, I was invited to join the mission team that they had just formed.
Naturally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and on that mission team was the president of World Relief, a guy named Clive Calvert, who had come from England, where he was the head of and I had moved there from England, and Clive was the head of the Evangelical Alliance in England, and was a very committed churchman. And when he heard me talking about church, like I used to make this quote from a theologian called Emil Brunner: the church exists by mission as fire exists by burning, and that my role was to help churches get their mission back.
Say,
When you hear
say
me
that
talk
again.
about this,
Say that quote again.
the church exists by mission as fire exists by burning.
Wow.
And when you take mission out and give it to mission agencies who take it away and do it for you and just give you a receipt to say you're involved, that's not good enough. The church has to exist by mission. So anyway, Clive Calver heard me talking about that, and so he offered me a job.
Wow.
He said, come to work with me at World Relief. And I was like, wait a minute, you're going to pay me money to do what I already do? And he's like, yeah. I couldn't believe it. I thought I won the lottery. I got
What were you
healthcare.
doing at that point?
I was raising my own support. Had for 10
Right.
years.
As a missionary, basically.
As a missionary, a
working in
wife
the
and
home
3
office?
children, and yeah, I'd come back home to work in the home office in Chicago, and Clive offered me that job, and so I went to, I learned about the World Relief, that it was owned by the National Association of Evangelicals, that it had a deep church rootedness to it. So I went to work, and he gave me this mandate. He said, go anywhere in the world where the church has money and get them to partner with us where we're working around the world. And I was blown away when I went to Africa, and I saw where in some cases the church was literally the only social structure left standing. And it really illustrated, wow, what I've been preaching is really true. If these churches don't have a living mission, they have no way to preach a message. And on my my second trip with World Relief, I landed in Rwanda, and I went to meet the director of the first microfinance institution that I ever met and I ever heard about. And I'd been studying about it with them and learning about microloans and community lending and creating collateral through groups. And so I was excited to go. And I met a young guy named Peter Greer. And turns out, Peter becomes, a real hero and pioneer in developing these microfinance banks into tremendous and professional institutions. But at that time, he was still young. He hadn't gone to Harvard. But I got to take a deep dive into economic development. And that took my understanding of what the gospel could do in the world to another level. Like this is people gaining access to the economy and gaining a horizon of hope for themselves and their family. And that's something bigger than I had understood that was our task. And I got to work in that arena for about 15 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
More than 80 countries.
And of course, as we talked before the podcast, just to put a note, just to connect the dots, obviously, Jeff Rutt, who's part of this podcast often, founded Hope and then hired Peter to run Hope, kind of the largest, as far as I know, the largest Christian microfinance nonprofit. So you were kind of in that same
Yeah.
international development world? Because Peter, what was Peter doing at that point?
Peter was the managing director of a microfinance bank called Orwego, which means ladder up. And that bank, which back then had, I think, something like maybe 3,000 clients or something,
Right.
has become, they in fact helped the country of Rwanda write the legislation to protect and develop the microfinance industry, and to protect it from the kind of charlatans or
Right.
shoddy work that happens under the name of microfinance. And so they really pioneered what was called at the time post-conflict microfinance. That is, going in very early after a disaster setting, not waiting for charity to spend years and years and years, but at very early days, go in and establish the groundwork for microfinance. And World Relief pioneered that form. And I think people like Peter took it to the next level, where
Right.
you now have investment arms, you have many different products. These are sophisticated institutions that Peter's developing now.
So this is so cool. So as I follow along here, I'm thinking, young guy from Ohio, uh, goes off to Vienna, learns about this thing. Like, wait a minute, shouldn't this be connected with the church? God gives you this job to kind of connect those two. Now you're like, wait, this economic development thing really has legs. So
Mm.
what's the next? I mean, these
Yeah,
legs of
well,
the
so
stool are starting to make sense in your career. So what happens next for you?
well, I spent the next 15 years, and this is maybe inside baseball, but if you are inside a large charity, typically the way that you have more pay is you get a more bigger portfolio, so you climb the ladder. So
Yeah.
I ended up a senior vice president at World Relief. I actually, for 3 years, one of our major partner churches invited me to come and serve as lead pastor for a church called Mars Hill Bible Church, a guy named Rob Bell. I served for 3 years in Michigan, and then came back to World Relief, and then was recruited by World Vision. And now I have 27 staff. I had a $4 million budget. I raised $27 million, I think, my last year in that role. But I sort of came to the end of what I sort of gone from a kid that got on a one-way ticket to Vienna with nothing to being an SVP at the largest Christian organization in America, $2 billion annually. And well, there's a quote by a friend of ours named David Sims. Maybe you know him, at a
I
group
do.
called Talenton. And
Talented.
he uses this quote that illustrates the dilemma that I saw. If you took the whole world's economy and you divide it up into 200 parts, the whole economy of the world, and then you took all forms of charity, private, public, multilateral, individual countries, the UN, it would be 3 or 4 parts of 200. So if you think the world has serious needs right now, you can conclude that charities will not be the solution. They may be part of it, but they will. You have to convert the economy. And actually, when I go back to my dissertation, the role of the missionary is actually to bring the gospel, not just geographically to new places, but to new ideas and to new concepts. And so the idea of converting the economy to become more life-giving for more people, including the planet, by the way, I just began to really nurture that. And then when I looked back at the world of microfinance, it has now, below the microfinance world, there's this whole savings movement. I don't know if that's
Yes.
a whole.
Yeah.
So there's the savings movement, the microfinance movement, and then beyond that, there's the impact investing space. So a number of my professional colleagues in the development world had moved into impact investing, or creating accelerators, or investment funds. And so I decided to leave a lot of people in my job, you would go from World Relief to World Vision to World Hope to World Concern. You just sort of
Yeah.
work the worlds,
Right.
and
Right.
and
Right.
I had two worlds that had given me so much, but I wanted, what I was convinced is that it is the economy, and therefore it is businesses that have the power to change the world, that entrepreneurs are the apostles of our age. Because you're not hearing pastors talk this way, unfortunately, so much. It is the entrepreneurial spirit of business owners that have so much more freedom to put money to work and to put businesses to work for the common good. And so about 6 or 7 years ago, I made that change, and God has blessed me to get enough clients to make a business, and then to begin to grow a model of impact business development, impact investing, and impact giving, that I'm able to help clients put money to work for a better economy.
Well, so let's get into that. This is so fascinating to me, the journey that you've been on and how you're now applying these. And I really give you credit for, hey, I'm learning something new. Maybe I can't fully apply it where I am. And so your ability to kind of pivot and make these changes, it's not easy to go out on your own and kind of do that consulting thing. So what does that model kind of look like? And maybe what are some examples
Yeah.
where you've helped some folks?
Yeah, well, buckle up here, because I'm going to give you a
Yeah,
very
let's do it.
short. One thing we have to do is a mindset shift, and that
Yes.
mindset shift involves overcoming or moving beyond charity, because
Yes.
often businesses are structured, or our thoughts are structured. If I ever were to get to X, then I would do good with my money.
Right.
And in fact, the old business model, and you could see this in the story of the Rockefeller Foundation, that the time 2 years after the Rockefeller Foundation was founded in 1913, Rockefeller hired a private army to put down a labor dispute.
Right.
So you can have a business that jacks up the world,
Right.
that just squeezes labor. You could be harming the world, but then you can have a charitable side of you that tries to do good. So harm the world, heal the world. But there are actually significant problems on planet Earth today. And I'm not a capitalist basher. I'm saying that the capitalist tool needs to be put to better use. So overcoming charity means what we now call the pursuit of intrinsic impact. We're
Okay.
seeking an impact in business that isn't an afterthought to what the business does. Intrinsic impact is about bringing the good we want for the world through what the business actually does and how it does it, not as a secondary charity step, but as a natural outcome of business operations. That's a mouthful, but we're already making an impact. And what we want to do is make sure, in fact, begin to see how our business can be part of healing the world. Okay, so that's first, intrinsic impact. And that's partially a mindset change.
Yes.
But then the second gets more technical, and we've introduced something called the balanced scorecard. And the balanced scorecard is a framework for recognizing that a business is made not just of financial capital or profit, not just human capital or people. It's actually made of 4 capitals. And that includes planet, which is natural capital, and communities, social capital, that's place. So we have a 4P balanced scorecard. And that is profit, people, planet, and place. As a Christian, the first example of economic crisis is Genesis chapter 4. You have 2 brothers, a shepherd and a farmer. They meet in the field of production. They believe there's not enough to go around, so one kills the other. The myth of scarcity leads to the myth of redemptive violence. That's kind of the Bible's way of saying, hey, folks, the belief that there's not enough to go around is contrary to a God who creates and creates and creates and creates. Imagine Cain and Abel coming redeemed. Imagine them getting saved, meeting Jesus, being reconnected to source. Hey, brother, we've got a problem here. We got 1 field. We got 2 ways of making money. What are we going to do? Because I'm still connected to the divine, I'm connected to God. I don't have to see the world through a scarcity lens. How can I evaluate my company and everything that it does through the lens of plenty,
Yeah.
through the lens of
Abundance.
innovation and abundance. That's right. Okay, let me give you an example about this. So one of my clients is a painting. It's a big painting company.
Mhm.
And when they've applied that lens, two things emerges. In the place quadrant, the communities that they're drawing their labor from, 99.9% of them are not white like me. They're brown.
Right.
And how did they get here? Well, at the American southern border, there are two signs. One of those signs says help wanted, and one of those signs says stay out.
Right.
So there's a whole community of vulnerable people right now being vilified in our political discourse who move so much of our economy.
Right.
And if you give a God-centered analysis of your place quadrant, in other words, what is the social capital you're trading in your
Great
business?
point.
If you look honestly and abundantly at that, you say, wow, how do we make sure not only do we not squeeze that labor pool, what if we became the best path to the American
Right.
dream? All those amazing folks doing this incredible work. So if you drive past Renovia in Indianapolis today, you'll see on the side of their building, which they use as a billboard, Renovia, elevating contracting in America. They discovered that through this work of multi-capitals analysis, and they've elevated this. Then here's another example from the same company. What they found when we did analysis about what is the planetary impact, what's the natural resource impact of painting? And it actually comes down to two things: waste in unused paint in buckets and plastic buckets. If you were to solve those two problems, you'd be the greenest painting company in America. No one solved that problem yet. And so this company, we are now in dialogue with recyclers, with haulers. There's all kinds of things coming down the road that if you solve that, you're going to go out into the market and win in the market because you're offering a better solution. And I'm not talking about ESG or something like that. I'm just talking about more life-giving solutions that are better for people. And so when you see that multi-capitals lens, you start saying, oh, this isn't about charity. This is about winning in the market through better solutions.
What is an example of the people quadrant?
Yeah, well, that's just your human capital. So that
how do you treat your employees?
It's for example, do we gain advantage by limiting their pay and lowering their pay, or do we increase our vitality because we give people purposeful work, a living wage, and a prospective future? And when it comes to profits, we're not saying to people, make less money because it's evil. Right. We're saying orient your business so that when you make money, you're like a tree, you distribute those resources. And that could be through wages, that could be through ownership. But if you make, our problem right now in America and around the world is a few people are making all the money and hoarding it. Something like 60% of all new wealth is going into one tiny room of our economic house. And that we need to sort of rewire the household so that it distributes resources to more people, and that's the kind of growth that we need. So anyway, that's this multi-capitals lens.
Okay, so we've got we had intrinsic impact in this. We have balanced scorecard, and then there's a third one, right?
Yeah, no, those are the two key.
Okay,
one
those
is
are the two.
Idea,
okay.
And one is a tool, a very comprehensive tool, and that's now the model that we use. So that model, and actually I will give you a third, because the third is this is a lot, Don. What you're talking about, I have to work every day. I got bills coming. I got challenges.
Right.
So we've developed a course called The Necessity of You, and it's a one-on-one coaching. It's 12 sessions, 1 hour each, and it's in 3 sections, and you'll love these. Waking up, growing up, and showing up. Waking up, growing up, and showing. And the waking up is this sort of stuff. But the main waking up is, who are you and why are you here? Really trusting that the divine spark in you has untapped power and potential. You're already, everybody that is a business leader is already doing that naturally, but we actually sort of did, and what that is it's a introduction to contemplative prayer. It's learning I'm sitting here among a bunch of oak trees. I always pick up an acorn and I say, this acorn is the perfect picture of prayer and contemplation, because it's holding within itself, actually and literally, a picture of an oak tree.
Yeah.
And how much more are you to
Right.
God's creation? What oak is inside you? Many, some people have already seen their oak come to fruition. There's probably another one. There's probably a forest of oaks for them. And so that waking up, who are you and why are you here? And then growing up, coming into that growth mindset, and then showing up is where we really bring people into this balanced scorecard. We do a materiality analysis of businesses to help them see what their actual footprint is in each of those quadrants. And then we try to see that every business we work with becomes a category of one. You're going to become the most positively impactful competitor in your industry. And that it's an awesome challenge.
I mean, the thing that keep ringing through my brain is, what Billy Graham said before he passed away, that the next big movement of God he thought was going to come through the business community.
Wow. Wow.
I
Yeah,
find that
that's
so
awesome.
interesting that you came at it from this sort of world, international relief angle and kind of found your way into this, where that's where the impact is in business. And then, I don't know, I feel that movement. Maybe it's because I do this every
No,
week,
I think
interview
it's
somebody, but
I think it
I
is
feel like that's happening.
I absolutely agree. I'll give you two things related to that. One is because I used to speak in churches all the time. People in business would often come to me and say, I'm really thinking about leaving business and
Right,
joining
right.
the ministry. And a long time ago, I started sort of disabusing people of that
Yeah.
and really helping them understand the power that they had in their sphere to make a difference. The second one, though, is a more missiological concept. The first martyr in the church in Acts chapter 7, verse 49, he says something that so angers the religious powers that be in Jerusalem that it leads to his martyrdom. And what it is that he says, he quotes Isaiah 66:1, which says, "Heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. My question is, what kind of household will you build me?" And that word household is the word oikos, where we get the word economy. So in Greek, that sentence would sound like, the real question is, what kind of economy will you build me? And I think that is the missiological question of our day. Will humans build an economy that includes more and more and more people onto a social floor that they can stand on? And will they do it under a environmental ceiling that we can live in on the abundance of this one earth? That is a very pressing challenge. It's an economic business challenge. And so I think that question to Stephen, what kind of economy will you build me, is the pressing human question that Christians and churches are meant to lead on. And often we're caught in the back heels. I was with World Relief for 10 years when Bono and a group from U2 did a study on American evangelicals' views of AIDS. And at that time, only 7% of Americans thought AIDS was something they should respond to.
Right.
By the end of the 2000s, everybody realized
Yeah.
we should. But I think the same thing is happening around environment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, you don't want to be a hippie, you don't want to be a political, but do you care for what cares for you? Do you care about these trees? Do you want to leave more than you? Yeah.
But I think the beauty of what you're saying is I've been thinking a lot lately about this idea where people talk about, I need to really bring my faith into my business. Okay. And I think that's interesting. And then I started thinking, well, I've been around some folks who are saying, well, they kind of have it backwards. You're supposed to bring your business into your faith, if that's kind of the worldview. Well, that's probably closer. But I kind of like the picture I'm getting is a little bit of the return to Eden, right? Where everything was kind of that economy was just perfect. We
Yeah,
produce,
absolutely.
it's creative. We're
Absolutely.
in unison with God, and obviously that gets broken with the fall. And we're just trying to get back to this. I like a redeemed economy is almost the way.
Yes.
And I like
That's
this sort of
it. That's
vision
it.
you have where it's like combined. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
we're not trying to tack on business to faith, and we're not trying to tack on faith to business. It's actually supposed to be this beautiful integrated tapestry. Is that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Isaiah called it a new heaven and a new earth.
There you go.
All reference that new creation concept. And this is where our theologies get us wrong in two ways. We literally think that the job is get people saved so they can go to heaven. We really do think that.
Yeah.
That's much more prevalent than we believe. The second is we were taught this ridiculous stuff like the Left Behind series and all that, which was really poor theology, which was kind of, this is all plan B. We're going somewhere else. This can all burn. No, this is our garden. This is what is ours to cultivate. And God, who loves us and loves this place, has got to be weeping. You know, here's a stat. I'm not like a green Mr. Green guy, but here's a stat. Things die, species die all the time. That's called the background extinction rate. Right now, species are dying at 1,000 to 10,000 times the normal extinction rate. That's just, we create 300 million tons of plastic every year. And it's just filling up. Here's one of my clients. So this is a real thing I'm working on. One of my clients is recognize that there's a roofing challenge when it comes to the environment, because the number 2 item in American landfills are roof tear-offs.
Oh, wow.
Commercial and industrial
Didn't know
roof
that.
tear-offs. Massive. So you put a rubber built-up roof on a big commercial building. You put a second one on it. Altogether, it lasts 40 years. You tear it off and put it in the ground where it takes 400,000 years to break down.
Right.
And we just keep doing that all the time.
Right.
Okay. So White Hat Industrial, one of my clients, has figured out that that old roof is a perfect substrate for a new silicone membrane. So you don't have to tear the roof off. You coat it
Right.
in a fluid applied, you restore the roof. And you can keep restoring that roof for longer than the rest of the building will last. And you say, so he now goes to major corporations that owns hundreds of thousands of square meters of roofing. And he shows them a picture. We've done an analysis, and here are 5 Empire State Buildings that you will not put into the ground if you choose us.
Right.
People don't even believe it. I mean, one of our jobs right now is to help people believe the good news of this revolution.
Well, this is the innovation. So
Absolutely.
it all feeds it's an economic idea, and then you can treat the people
but Jeff,
well. It's good.
Can't you see how exciting that is? That way you can go to your receptionist and say, you're on a mission to revolutionize roofing, to literally save the planet through new roofing.
Right.
What? I never even thought of that. But it's giving people a sense of purpose. So to me, these are the kind of innovations, and this kind of thing, and I could bore you to tears, is happening in every industry. All these new pressures on the economy are happening. And what I like to tell older business owners, if you don't care about this, if you don't like looking at these multi-capitals, don't worry. There's a 26-year-old who's already settled all these issues, and he is about to eat your lunch if you leave all this stuff on the table, because your innovation is coming through these better solutions, and the younger generations have already settled this.
Yeah. They do this intuitively.
Exactly.
Well, listen, Don, I know we're running out of time, and it's just been wonderful to hear your framework of how this looks. Let me ask you this: as we wrap up, what we always ask is, what is just a practical tip? Somebody's listening to this, okay, I got these 4 quadrants, but I am busy, but I do want to kind of move in this direction to be, a little more integrated with, having my business be redeemed in this way. What would be just a practical tip you might leave with them?
Yeah, I think that an honest reevaluation, most people know, it just takes a little bit of questioning, and they know where their biggest margin comes, and they know, is that healthy? Am I squeezing labor? Am I helping labor?
Yeah.
I think that that wake up section that I talked about, just bringing that work into your prayer life, to sit with it, just to be with it, and not to like, oh, I want to fix it immediately. Some of these things are generational challenges that we have to take on. So I think that honest willingness to face ourselves, good and bad, because in what I like to say, in the dirty little secrets and animal spirits within your industry, there lies redemptive innovation possibilities for you. So if you can fall in love with these new problems that you become aware of, that's pathways to innovation.
Yeah, I love that. Just an honest reevaluation. Maybe take a day to
Yeah.
pray about those things and think
Yeah.
about those things.
Yeah.
And
Well, and you're probably going to say, like, how can people connect with you? Let me give
sure,
let me say that one thing that I love to do is chat with anybody, so
sure.
if you reached out to me, I'd love to just learn about you, hear about your business, and just see, what from our perspective do we see in your business that we could chat about. So you could find me on LinkedIn, or you can come to our website at justcapitalquotient.com, and I'd love to have that kind of initial sort of free assessment
Yeah.
kind of chat.
Well, we'll put a link to your website in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
And Don, thanks so much for being with us this week. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, good. I've really enjoyed it, Jeff. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for joining us on this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. Share it with a friend, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.